Oh, Mama, she saved my life. Okay. Okay, now everyone hears me. Okay, great. Okay, so we're already lost 5 minutes. Anyway, good to see everyone. Not quite the same crowd as yesterday, but I guess, all right. Everyone thought I was revealing Mashiach yesterday, but I guess today they're just teaching the old Hilchos Dvar. So, first of all, I just heard, I told Rabbi Wecker, I heard Rabbi David Feinstein's back in the hospital. Maybe should have in mind David Ben Shima. Unfortunately, he needs a Racham Ishmael. But made our learning, no one sponsored it, so I'll give it l'schus of David Ben Shima. Maybe we have a Refuah Shlema b'Tayv Shachar Yisrael. So we started talking about Einos Dvarim. Einos Dvarim is a mitzvah leisus ein Torah. If you say words that are hurtful to someone and you insult them, you're over on a leisus. It's no different than if you ate chaza. Imagine we wouldn't think of eating chaza. We make sure the biggest hechsher. When you say a harmful word to someone, you're over on a leisaseh. Now the Torah writes the leisaseh, and it's really interesting. It's sort of a fascinating discussion because there are two leisasehs that are almost identical. One says leisainu ish es amisai, and then one is leisainu ish es amisai, and then the other pasuk is al tainu ish es achiv. So there's two pasukim that seem to be redundant. And the Gemara says the word ainah has two connotations. One is ainah, what we remember from the fourth parak in Bava Metzia is ainah, the isra of ainah. You're not allowed to cheat someone in business. You're not allowed to overcharge. And if you charge more than a sixth or more, you're having a leisaseh. Certain times you have to give it back, sometimes not. Whatever it is in isra of ainah, and you're not allowed to be deceitful. You're not allowed to overcharge or deceive someone in business. That's the isra of ainah, when you deceive someone and charge them an inappropriate price without them knowing, and that's ainah. And then the pasuk also says, the other pasuk, the one says, talking about ainah of harsh words, of insulting someone, telling someone about their past, telling someone who's suffering, you're suffering because you did averis and things like that. Or just simply insulting someone, simply saying an insult. So it's strange. The Mishnah actually says, just like there's an isser of Einos Dvarim, of deceiving someone, Einos Mammon, so too there's an isser of Einos Dvarim. But it's apples and oranges. It may have the same word. One is a question of deceit, and one is a question of harmful words. The word Einos actually has two connotations. The word Eini can mean pain, and Einos can also come from the root oven, which means deceit, corruption, being deceitful. So it's not clear why the Torah uses these two exact psukim almost. Al tainu ish es amisai, al tainu ish es achiv, but has totally different connotations. And yet the Mishnah says that they're both, just like your Einos Dvarim, Einos Mammon, just like you're not allowed to deceive someone with mammon, you're not allowed to harm someone with words. It's unequal. It's a very difficult understanding what the Gemara means, what the Mishnah means, and why is it the same. So I have two ideas. Before we go forward, I want to share just two ideas, I think. It says, the truth is, you're not allowed to cheat someone with money. That's, of course, an isser of why the Torah used the word ainah. Maybe the answer is because even when you cheat someone, it's not just about the money. When someone feels cheated and you take advantage of someone and you sort of overpower him and you make him feel like a fool and you take advantage of a person and best him by overcharging him and deceiving him. What hurts him sometimes more than the money. I mean, the money could be also significant, but what really hurts, it's an insult, a personal insult. Well, you take me for a fool. You don't treat me like a peer. You don't treat me equal. I'm an idiot. You take advantage of me. So it could be it's the pain in deception that we're talking about. So maybe the Torah used that, and that's what I mean. Just like you're not allowed to pain someone by taking for a fool, you're certainly not allowed to call someone a fool. You're not allowed to call him names and diminish him by not cheating him. That's one way of doing it. Maybe that's the shot. And the other way, I think it works the other way also. And this is a little deeper, but I'm just going to say it's, briefly because we don't have that much time and we want to get through this pamphlet. But I think, when a person puts someone else down, we all know, I'm sure Rabbi Wecker must have written about this in his book. Most people put other people down because they have an inflated view of themselves. They have a distorted sense of who they are and what they're entitled to, and therefore they can put other people down. So I think when you insult someone and you try to get someone, to get the better of him and put him down and diminish him, it usually stems from self-deception. You're fooling yourself. Who do you think you are? You think you're better than him, and you could talk to him and put him down and say he's an idiot, he's cheap, he's lazy. Usually people who are insecure in themselves and have a distorted sense of self fool themselves about who they are the ones who normally, people who come to who they are, they know who they are, don't need to put anyone down. So that's a little bit of an idea why the balance of the word I know. I mean, they both have an element of pain, they both have an element of deception. That's something to think about. But let's go a little further. And I want to say a very important point tonight, and that's what we're gonna focus on tonight. Sometimes we say something and we say it with absolute honesty and almost with care and concern. We're not there necessarily to put someone down or to diminish them. But sometimes we say something out of maybe you think of honesty, or even with an intention for the better of the other person, but he gets insulted. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says that Beinam l'chaveroi is not, we get punished for hurting other people even when we don't intend to do it, even if it's inadvertent. You say something, you didn't really mean it in that way, you really meant to praise him, but he took it the wrong way and it really touched on the wrong nerve. That wasn't your intention at all, but you get punished for it, because he says, Beinam l'chaveroi, I often quoted this, I heard it from him many times, is like walking to a fire. You don't say, well, I walked into a fire, I didn't do it intentionally, I shouldn't get burnt. A human's neshama and his delicate, fragile state and his pain that he feels is like a fire that goes out. And if you unintentionally touch the fire, you get burned. That's somebody brings a famous raya. And this is interesting because here's a classic case where someone actually accomplished something positive by taunting someone with the intent to help her, not to hinder her, and yet she was punished. The famous story of Hannah, who had the mother of Shmuel. She was the wife of Elkanah, and he had two wives, Penina and Hannah. Penina had 10 children, Hanina had 0, and Penina felt bad for Hannah, and she used to contrast her co-wife who had no children with her children. Oh, see how beautiful they're dressed? Almost like to intimate, where are your children? Look at. I'm bathing the children, and she would accent the contrast between the blessing that she had and the lack that Hannah had. And her intent was l'shem shamayim, because she knew that if Hannah would really feel badly about it, the Shari'ah is not closed, as you said yesterday. And she would daven with a greater intensity, and she did, and she was indeed answered. Oh. But it says like this, that every time Hannah davened and every time Penina had a child, the Gemara says that every child, and again, Hannah eventually had more than she had 5 children. She had 5 children. Hannah eventually had 5 children. Shmuel was the first. And for every child that Hannah eventually had, 2 of the 10 would die of Penina, in punishing her for having taunted Hannah, even though her taunts is what gave the intensity to Hannah's prayers that eventually blessed her with 5 children. And every time she had a child, 2 of Penina's children, because although her intention was positive and actually prodded, and it was to her attribution that Hannah davened the way she did and had the prayers answered, nevertheless, 2 of her children died. Until the last one, she prayed to her, don't pray that my children should live. I did it l'shem shamayim, and her last 2 children remained alive. So it's a famous proof from that story. And the other stories are being true from, we don't have time for that. But the idea is, and there, okay, she pained her, it was l'shem shamayim. But the Reb Chaim says, even when you don't have intention to pain, but sometimes you do something out of innocence, and you don't realize how fragile the person is, even though you didn't mean, and you meant 100% the benefit of the other person, and you were justified in what you did. If the person is pained, you will suffer the consequences. And in this pamphlet, they bring a remarkable story. I had read it many years ago, and I'll repeat the story here. It was a couple who was celebrating the birth of a son, The father was 52 years old. The mother was 46. You can imagine the excitement of having a child after, in that age, never having children before. And they came by the bris, and the father of the boy, of the baby, got up to tell everyone what him and his wife went through all these years to have a baby. And he went on to say, during the years of marriage, we attempted all the possibilities. We went to doctors in Eretz Yisrael. We went to America. And finally in America, the doctor says, I'm sorry, young couple, not young couple, older couple, you ain't having kids. You exhausted all your possibilities. There's nothing. So they came back to Eretz Yisrael. They were dejected. They didn't know what to do. And they decided, like Yitzchak and Rivka, they sat in two separate corners of the house. They would daven and beseech HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reveal to them maybe what it is that they can find why they're not deserving of children, and maybe they'll still be married. While he was crying one day, suddenly a picture, an image came to his mind from the past. And it was like a flash of lightning, he said. He remembered that he was in the Yeshiva Gedolah. He was a boy, 19, 20, 21. And there was a lady with a difficult life who would clean the yeshiva. And for a certain period of time, she came regularly. She was known. The people knew who she was, a younger woman. And she brought along her 4 young children with her to work. They would run around the yeshiva, and you can imagine, and disturb and make a disturbance. In the Bachram decided amongst themselves, we got to do something about it. We can't learn. The kids are running around like Vildachayas. So they said, the oldest one, who happened to be this fellow, who had now a father to the child, he just said he was the oldest one. They said, okay, go. And he went to her, and he said, with a very respectably, and he explained nicely, and he said, we're trying to learn. I know kids, but we can't learn if they're commanding, as they say in Yiddish, all over the place. So the woman turned to him and said, at that time, he says, I'm a woman with a very hard life, and it was great difficulty that I had to make a livelihood to feed my children. I have no one to babysit them. I wish you should never have children that will disturb you from your learning. He looked at that. He goes back in time at that moment when it hit to him. He's telling over the story. It was a year before the baby was born. And he said, I had to do something. I remember that episode. It was 30 years earlier, 30 years. He was 56. So he must have been a bacha. He says 30 years. He was 26. He was an older bacha. And he remembered that story. He was a mature bacha who approached it with dignity and respect. And yet he realized that must have been the episode. He tracked down from the old secretary who knew the woman because she worked there for many years subsequently. They had the number. He calls her late in the evening and he says, listen, I need to speak to you. It's an emergency. The woman didn't know what he's talking about. If you tell me and say, oh, matzav cherum, astavo. She lived in Bat Yam. He was in Yerushalayim. She took a cab and he goes there late at night and he comes to her and he comes to her and he tells her the whole story. And surprisingly, she said, she remembered me. And she told us that period of life was extremely difficult for her and she was forced to raise her children all by herself. She said, the last thing I wanted to do was bring my kids along with me to work. When you told me those words, it caused me great pain. She began to cry when she saw the results of it all and said, Ani mochelet lechem. I'm certainly meichel you, and you should be having zeicha the children. And it was already morning when he went home. They had come, they had sensed that they were zeicha to resolve the issue. And indeed, a year later, had a baby. It's remarkable. In other words, he did it with all innocence and all gutzkeit. And he did it with respect, but a woman was hurt. And he didn't realize it. And she was pained. And she held it in, not even with resentment, just it was a pain of that difficult time until he resolved it. It's a powerful story. And, I don't think we have to get spooked and start thinking about it. But, it's something to think about. At least from this point on, you never know. You say something, you think you're entitled to say it. He was right. And they said by the bris, they quote here in the end of the story that there was some gedolim at the bris, because so many people came to celebrate this great simcha. And someone asked, one of the Gedolei Hadar, after hearing the story, he says, he did the right thing. What's he supposed to do? The woman was going to kids, they were staring. He said, how can he be that he suffered? He said, because you have to calculate, he wasn't the right person to do it. He should have told his Rosh Yeshiva, and he would have done it with a certain, maybe in a different way. Maybe he would have resolved it, or for her babysitting. It wasn't that he didn't have good intentions. But you have to go even more. A yid has to go further. And if you don't go to the right address and you do it on your own, even with the greatest intentions, you never know how someone may be affected. Amazing. We have to, and again, we think sometimes only strangers. Like I said yesterday, it's even more true when we do it to the people closest to us. Having aniyim b'nei veischa. I just learned with someone today, a young boy. I learned in Mishnayos, I learned on a Zoom, and we learned in Mishnah aniyim b'nei veischa. The famous charity starts at home. You should treat the b'nei veischa like aniyim. We have to be kind and sensitive to the ones closest to us that we take for granted. Because you never know, a painful word can make a tremendous impact. Okay, thank you everyone. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Nice crowd, and I really appreciate everyone coming. And we should only speak kind words one to another. And I'm going to go run out to Dam Mincha. Hasta la vista. Agit Nacht.